This is your week 7. I'm sorry about that. It seems like, yeah, I do believe that this is Jay's soul still falling into the sunken place. Let's give it a little time to breathe, shall we? Let it out, buddy. Let it out. Just let it all out. It's okay. Losing Andy is a traumatic experience. It hurts. It takes away from your manhood, your dignity, your pride. All the words that you can muster up, it drains you. It really does. But of course I wouldn't really know because I haven't lost to him. But hold on. You're transitioning into a better place. Just let me read these stats, all right, buddy? 12 players rather, have scored over 30 points this season. Week number 1, we had Hunt for Dro, who had 39 points. Week number 2, we had no 30-point performances. Week number 3, we had Brady with 35 for Joe. Wilson, 32 for Orlando, and Gurley, 32 for me. Week number 4, you had Watson with 33 for Jay, 32 for Cam Newton for Ed, and Le'Veon Bell, 30 points for Jay as well. Week 5, Watson, 35, Fournette, 30 for me. Week number 6, we had no 30-point performances either, and then just this week, you had a 39 by Ezekiel Elliott for Jay. Cooper had a 33 for Orlando, but he was on O's bench. And we had Carson Wentz, 30 points for Andy. You would be very, very surprised to know that only 2 of these teams have lost so far this season. The one that makes the most sense is just this week, where Jay obviously lost to Andy with his 39 from Ezekiel Elliott and Andy's 30-point performance from Carson Wentz. That is the only time this season that 2 teams have gone up against each other and have their respective 30-point performances. The most embarrassing one was Orlando losing week 3 with his 32-point performance from Russell Wilson. Okay, you can stop. This is your week 7 recap, and this recap is pretty much dry compared to all the other ones. There are no surprises this week. You guys are still terrible. I'm still undefeated. This is just getting old. However, I will let you guys know, inform you, it is my duty as the co-commish. As we move on to this next week, by the end of next week, rather by the middle, it's going to be the beginning of November. Now, November 16th, you guys should know, a Thursday at 12 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, it is the trade deadline. So for those of you who need to make some moves, which in my opinion, I think there's at least about 2 of you that should do something. Maybe Hensel, for whatever reason, should trade Tyreek Hill. You know, just dish him out and maybe play James White instead and get somebody else in there that's going to help you. Maybe Paul should trade Evans, drop Andy Dalton because he's the 26th ranked. That makes no sense, by the way, Paul. It makes no sense that you, for whatever reason, have decided to keep Andy Dalton on your team because, like I said, he's the 26th ranked quarterback. He already had his bye. I'm sorry, Jameis Winston already had his bye. I mean, are you realistically going to put Andy Dalton in to substitute for Jameis Winston if he's healthy? Okay, so let's say Jameis Winston gets hurt. I mean, is Andy Dalton the best that you can do, and so much to the point that you have to stash him on your bench? I think you should drop Andy Dalton. I think you should trade Mike Evans and go running back heavy. Just forget about this fucking utopia that we all seem to have on our heads where we think that we're supposed to have a dominant quarterback, dominant running game, and dominant wide receivers, and you know your tight ends are pretty much just a toss-up. Let's not live in that world this year, Paul. Let's trade away Mike Evans and let's get a consistent RB2 that's going to make you top heavy. Just power, just running, just 15-point performances a piece. You know what I'm saying? You get your 45 consistently from those three players. But I'm just over here rambling. So remember, Thursday, November 16th, 12 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, which for Dro would be 9 p.m., I'm assuming. That is the trade deadline, so make sure you get your trades in. As I said, there's not really much going on this week, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to let you know about the standings, really. And the standings are pretty much where we left them last week with Peggy at 7-0. We have Turtle Power. This is the number 1 division, by the way. Turtle Power at 4-3 in second place. We have a 3-4 Eric, a 3-4 Paul, and a 3-4 Hensel. And over in the El Caporal division, the tighter, the competitive, the division that will actually mean something in 3 to 4 weeks, we have Ed at the top at 4-3, Dad Bod with a 3-4 record, Joe at 3-4, Andy at 3-4, and Dro at 2-5. Dro would surprise you because although he's 2-5, he's amongst the top scorers in the league with 555 points. Now, granted, he has he doesn't have as good records as Joe, Ed, or Andy, and he's toppling them. But he there's not much separation between him, Joe, and Ed. I mean, he's at 555, Joe is 531, and Ed is 520, but he's got more points than them, so that should count for something at this point. So I don't feel like Dro's team reflects its record, but I do think that Dro should make a trade as well. But once again, I'm just yapping up here. That's all I'm doing, right? So let's move along to the week 7 scores. You had Peggy with the number 1, the highest score of the week at 118 to Joe's 59 points. You had Paul beating Eric by 105 to 79. Hensel losing to Orlando, very close game, 73 to 77. Jay losing to Andy. I'm sorry, I got a phone call there. Losing to Andy 82 to 85. Dro defeats Ed by a score of 105 to 56, and that would make Ed the lowest scoring team of the week. So let's just move on to next week's matchups, because like I told you, there's not really much meat on the bone here, nothing much to discuss, except for the fact that the buys haven't hit or aren't going to hit anyone quite as hard as they're going to hit Eric and I this week. I mean, if you take the time to take a look at my bench and Eric's bench, you'll see that I have Todd Gurley, Leonard Fournette, Adrian Peterson, Aaron Jones, Greg Zerlon, Legatron, Evan Ingram, and Chris Ivory, all on bye. My entire bench is just nothing but buys. So it wasn't very difficult for me to get a replacement in there for a second running back, but I've got a much weaker option here with Jalen Richard, who's stepping in for Marshawn Lynch because he was suspended because he's a criminal, a low-key criminal who would be probably running into people's houses if he didn't have any talent. And you have on Eric's bench here, you've got Jordy Nelson on a bye, Ty Montgomery and Randall Cobb. Obviously, they're on the same team. Eric's got a lot of Green Bay Packers. Mason Crosby on a bye. He's got the Jaguars defense. He's got Marcus Lee, Eli Manning, Allen Hurns, all on a bye. I've checked the rest of your teams. You guys maybe have 1 or 2 people, but this is going to be the bye ball. Eric still has not figured out what he's going to do with his 2 wide receiver positions. I guess, no, he's got no options here, so he's going to have to dig into the player pool to get him. Maybe he should have moved on that Tuesday night. What do you guys think? You think Eric kind of dropped the ball there? What do you guys think? Anyway. So let's move on to the other matchups. We've got Orlando going up against Taint Sweat. Taint Sweat is projected to get 96 points. I'd like to see you pull that one off, you dickhead. We've got Jay going up against Hensel. Andy against Dro. This should be an interesting matchup because Andy and Dro have just been top tier fantasy teams. I'm so excited to see where this matchup goes because whoever wins this matchup will determine who will dominate from this point on. That last little thing tested positive for sarcasm. You guys aren't going to do much. All right, we've got Joe going up against Ed to finish out the week's matchups. Ed at 4-3 and Joe at 3-4. So let's see what happens there. It's projected to be a pretty close matchup. I have nothing else more to say to any of you. You're all an embarrassment to me. I hope to never be seen on the streets with any of you. I wouldn't make out with any of you. Maybe just one of you. And maybe I'll reveal that to you in the next coming weeks if one of you beats me. And which, by the way, I think that this is a legitimate shot for me to lose. I mean, Eric could quite possibly just pick a few players and, they get 20-point performances and I could lose. I feel very good about the fact that my 4 running backs at this point are both all canceled out in 1 week. I think at this point I could afford to take one loss if that just so happens to to go down this week. I already have Dak Prescott already, his bye passed. I think the only significant player that I have left would be Antonio Brown, but I can afford that in a few weeks. So this was your Week 7 recap. And as always, may your quarterbacks get hurt before they leave the locker room. May your running backs pull their hamstrings. And may your wide receivers get arrested for marijuana possession. Go fuck yourselves.